Hi, my name is Donnell Buggs. I'm the director of Bigger and Better Business for Kappa Upsilon Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. This week is Sigma Small Business Week, and our goal is to highlight and spotlight Black-owned businesses within our community. Today, I'm sitting with a brother that you will get to know. His name is Lionel Johnson, and he's the owner, Brotha with the Camera. He's a photographer and a videographer, and we're live at his studio, the Brotha with the Camera studio. And so, welcome, Brotha Johnson.
Thank you.
All right. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to meet with me today. It's an honor for me to be able to sit with you here at your studio. And so I just want to give the audience an opportunity to know who you are and a little bit about the services that you provide. So can you give me a little bit of your background and your experience?
All right. So I'm a photographer, videographer, content creator, all that stuff. I've been doing this for about, in total, I'd say 7 years, roughly. I originally started making YouTube videos of one of my exes back in 2016, and as I did that, I just gained more knowledge about photography, videography, and cameras in general. I guess I have a bit of a technical background, so I was always good at math and science and stuff like that. And so, once I got into the camera, I have a habit of just wanting to learn more and more and more from both a technical side and then an artistic side. So I have an artistic background also. I play piano. Okay. I played a few instruments growing up. But so when I put it all together, it was I just accumulated information and just kept learning, and then here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And so prior to becoming a professional videographer and photographer, what were you doing before?
So my previous job, I worked in IT for a company called McKesson, which is a pharmaceutical distributor. There, I kind of ran the IT department at a distribution center that I worked at up in Robbinsville. And I was there for about 7 years. I didn't start there doing IT, but I got promoted up until that position.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I was there for 7 years in total.
Okay. And who were some of the influencers that influenced your style and your reason for getting into photography and videography?
So most of my influences revolved around YouTube, to be honest with you. Originally, we started doing vlogs. That's a video log of your day, so to speak. So if we're going somewhere, you just record it and talk to the people, right? So if I were to say who influenced me, there's a few people on YouTube. There's a guy named Peter McKinnon. There's a guy named Casey Neistat. He's pretty big. You've seen him, you might know who he is. But in the YouTube space, he's huge. And the way they just film things, I just was amazed because they made everyday mundane things look interesting, right? And so that's kind of what vlogging is, to take something that you do every day and you just film it in a way to where somebody else that, maybe doesn't live anywhere near you would want to be interested in watching that thing. It could be something as simple as I'm going to the mailbox and check my mailbox, but they can just film it in a certain way where it's oh man, that's really cool. Why am I watching this? But you're watching it because it's interesting somehow. And so that's kind of where I, got my inspiration from. I don't really vlog much these days, but that's what really piqued my interest in just film and then later on photography.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so you've been in the field for about 7 years or so. What led you to decide to start your own photography and videographer business? So
I started the business, I want to say, around 2000, maybe 19, I want to say. I guess as I accumulated knowledge, and then even being at the job I was at, I didn't plan on staying there forever. I've always had a thing of just trying to work for myself. That's kind of just been me. Even prior to that job, I used to work on music and stuff like that and do that for a while. But as I gained more knowledge, I just realized that this was something that you could do. There was a need for it, there's a demand for it. Whether it's just so I did headshots for people. So as I learned videography, I eventually got into photography.
Okay.
Now they're different, but from a technical perspective, they're not all that different. you know. And so once I got into that, and you realize, you know, oh, people need pictures, and they see you do this, and like, oh, well, can you do pictures here? Can you do pictures there? So you kind of start off that way, doing stuff for free a lot of times.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, and then you realize that there's a huge need for this service, and if you're merely decent at it, you can make a good living. You know, if you're great at it, then you can thrive even more. Mm-hmm. But I think understanding that there was just a demand for that skill set that most people don't have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a business owner comes with challenges.
It does.
What would you say are some of the biggest challenges you face as a photographer and videographer business owner?
So I would correlate this challenge more to anybody who's an entrepreneur rather than specifically a photographer, videographer. But I'd say that leaving my job, for example, because it paid very well, mm-hmm. right? That in itself was a huge struggle for me initially, because it's like there's like a pressure that no one's really putting on you, but you still feel. Mm-hmm. And if you're making the money I was making, it's like, well, is this even responsible to walk away from this kind of job to do something that's not really solid yet? Granted, I had started my business at the time, and I was making income here and there, but it wasn't anything to live off of, right? But at the same time, I realized in order to cultivate the business properly, I would need the time and to be able to put into it. And, you know, working every day is just not going to allow me to do that. So once you go full-time as an entrepreneur, the biggest hurdles I would say, depending on who you are, is money management. Because whereas before I had, you know, steady income and I had somewhat disposable income, I could do what I wanted and just waste money all the time, which I did. Like, so now it's like, well, you can't do that anymore. You have to be, you know, you have to be more responsible and more aware. And then there's a thing called imposter syndrome, where sometimes you may not feel like you're good enough. For example, even now to a certain extent, not so much, but sometimes I may not charge what I should charge. Okay. Right? And when I compare my work to other people in the industry's work that I would consider, or that most people would consider, like, you know, great, then I would be like, okay, I'm not really far from that. And if that's the case, I should be charging accordingly. But there seems to be this like weird psychological thing where you don't want to be really expensive, but then you do. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
So you got to get out of that. That's a whole other thing. Especially if if you want to make, let's say, $80,000 a year, $100,000 a year, then you have to charge accordingly. Now you have to have the work to back it up, but you can't just like always try to cut people breaks. Or, you know, so you have to it's a confidence thing. Right. It's a confidence, it's almost an arrogance thing, but I'll say more it's a confidence thing where it's like, this is the price, this is what I'm worth, and if you don't like it, that's fine, you can go somewhere else, because I have to live off this. So those are the struggles. It's really having an understanding of business, and then understanding what it takes for you to live the lifestyle you want and to thrive at it. And then the last thing I'll say is, when you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're in a field where you're still growing and maybe things can be seasonal sometimes, whatever, having to endure dull moments or low moments when, like, you know, I might have made, you know, $4,000 one month, next month ain't looking too hot. And you have to psychologically be able to endure that. Like, there was times where I was like, I'm not sure how I'm gonna pay this rent next month, but you just gotta like mentally be able to get through it, and then, you know, hopefully it works out.
Absolutely.
But it's always worked out in my case.
How about that?
So to the point where now I'm pretty comfortable right now. So,
yeah. That's amazing. So you really stepped out on faith.
Yeah.
You know, you had a secure job, you know, and I'm sure it wasn't easy to walk away from that, stepping into or transitioning into a field that you were passionate about, right, but not really always knowing the outcome and, you know, the startup. It's a lot. Right. So psychologically, emotionally, I'm sure, and maybe even physically challenging for you. But you also talked about knowing your worth, your value, you know, as a business owner and the services that you provide, building that confidence up. What did you say or do to help bring your confidence up to a place where you kind of began to understand and recognize your value and your worth?
So for me, a big thing is like quality, right? Mind you, it's just me. I work for myself. It's just me. So understanding what my idea of quality is versus what I consider like the standard of quality is for any given field. So the biggest thing for me was always trying to make sure my work was more than adequate. Like, not to sound arrogant, but that's just what it is. Like, I've really studied and compare myself to others, what they're charging, how their work looks, and I don't ever want to just be average at what I do. Even this interview we're doing right here is like, I want it to look like a certain way. Like, if I'm doing video, I want it to look like TV, honestly. We're in my home here, but outside of that, the quality is sharp, the audio is clear, that's what I go for. So once I kind of was satisfied with the quality of my work, then it gave me the mental confidence to not be scared to charge what I feel like I should be worth. So that's it for me. I think it's kind of different for everyone, because there's some people whose work ain't that great and they have the confidence to charge you whatever, and it's like, it's a little delusion there. I don't know. Right. There's a little a disconnect. Right. But for me, it was like, it kind of goes back to the whole imposter syndrome thing. It's for me just realizing, like, looking at my work and then looking at work from somebody who might charge like, a lot of money. And it's like, man, you really aren't that far off from that person. Not really. Mm-hmm. And your work looks far better, in my opinion anyway, than these other people. And they could be charging more than you. So it's like, I felt confident to the point where my, ability just made me feel better about charging what I wanted. And then taking into consideration, like, listen, if you want to survive, you got to charge more. Mm-hmm. Right. Rent That's on a national average is $2,000 a month.
That's right. That's right. You got to eat, right?
So, right. Yeah, those two combinations just kind of, but experience and, understanding the quality of work experience, and just, you just got to do it eventually. You just feel it like, all right, it's time.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm still going through that. Like, I charge a lot more than what I used to.
Okay.
But I could probably double it, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't. So I'm it's a progress where you creep up, and then
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned arrogance a few times, but I think there's a difference between arrogance and operating in a spirit of excellence. Right.
Yeah.
And so I believe that we're all called to operate in a spirit of excellence. If you go to a restaurant, you don't want just mediocre food. You want food that is of quality.
Yes.
Right. And that's what makes people come back and get that experience and relive it all over again, because of the experience.
Right.
The dining, the aura of the restaurant, the service, all those things, play a role.
Right.
And someone in your profession, I can imagine that, you want to operate in a spirit of excellence. You want to give quality work, because that's how you keep customers, right?
Yeah. So, yes. What you're talking about, I would consider that offering a premium experience, right? And that's exactly what I want to do. There just becomes a difficult, and I hate to say it, like, especially in the Black community, a difficult task of making people understand that I'm offering a premium experience. And I have the know-how, I have the equipment that I spend thousands of dollars on. I have the portfolio to display, like, this is why I charge what I charge. And some people don't understand that. And then there's a psychological thing where it's like, you don't want to be seen as, like, the person who thinks they're better than everybody else. You don't, it's like a weird struggle that you go through.
Like a conflict.
It's definitely an internal conflict that has, like, an unconscious societal pressure where it's like, some people think, oh, you're too expensive. And it's just like, I think I've really learned now, especially being that I am somewhat comfortable and, I'm still growing, but I'm in a decent space. You have to be okay with turning away customers. Like, if you don't want to pay my price, that's fine. But psychologically, somebody might be like, oh, it's too much. Oh, whatever, can you do that? And if you're a certain kind of person that has empathy and all that good stuff, it's like, you want to be like, all right, well, I can do this for, it's just, but you're doing yourself, it's a good thing, but at the same time, you're doing yourself a disservice, because the work is the work. So you have to kind of deal with that struggle. And there's times where, some people, like, I'll give a break on something if I, based on them and what the situation is. But other times it's like, I got to eat that. If I do that, I got to eat that. It's a weird dichotomy of of business where do you want to just offer a premium service and only cater to this clientele, this client base, or do you want to try to be more for everyone? It's a tough thing. Yeah. But ultimately, you want to be the premium. I'm keeping it real. That's what you want.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. People want quality work. So you have to,
Exactly.
Because you'll go to another community that might charge double, as you mentioned before.
With no problem.
With no problem at all.
No problem at all.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Speaking of community, are you a part of any community initiatives or organizations related to photography and videography?
Currently, no, not that I can really think of. No, I did have an opportunity one time to do something for Willingboro. I think my schedule's a little busy right now to the point where a lot of times they want things on the weekends or, I'm not against it, but I'm mainly trying to stay booked and busy overall. Mm-hmm. But I'd be open to doing certain things. But, I got to pay this rent.
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah. But hopefully, in the future, right, when you're, have opportunities and a little space to maybe look into maybe some initiatives that would be really helpful to showcase your business and your skills. I think that'd be a great opportunity to do so. What advice, Lionel, would you give to individuals who aspire to start their own photography and videography business, especially those who are in underrepresented communities or backgrounds?
So I would say you have to really devise a strategy of what you want, and you have to be dedicated in a way that maybe you haven't been dedicated to other things before. I think that kind of carries over to every art form, every job, career path that you want to endeavor into. Is things take time, and you can't get around that, right? Unless you're just some kind of prodigy. But even still, you have to understand the knowledge of business. You have to understand the knowledge of marketing yourself and the know-how to deliver a final product that is adequate or above adequate. So a lot of people, like photographers, they get a camera and they say, I want to take some pictures and make some money. But it's like you didn't really invest the proper time to get even the proper equipment to where you should be charging. Not to hate, but there's a lot of people that, you get a camera with what's called a kit lens. It's an 18 to 55 millimeter lens, comes with most cameras, and you want to go do a wedding, and it's like, that's crazy to me. And I've seen it many times, and it's like, this person's wedding is a once in a lifetime thing, and you owe it to them to offer them a proper experience because they can't redo that day. So you really have to just, I don't want to say don't be greedy, but you have to really respect the craft that you're partaking in and take it serious, and then just be dedicated long term to where, okay, I may not be profitable for 2 years or whatever because I'm in a learning phase. And then, you constantly learn, but that's just the biggest thing is the time and being able to take in knowledge and having the patience to take in knowledge. The amount of videos I've watched, the amount of articles I've read, it's ridiculous. And I taught myself all this stuff.
Wow.
But I didn't spend, even now, if I want to watch a tutorial on something, that tutorial is an hour long, I'm gonna sit down and watch it because this information is valuable to me.
It's an investment.
It's exactly an investment of time, and time is money. It's all money. Right. So it's you have to really just be dedicated. It's not a flash in the pan thing where I just want to do this, and then no, you got to really have passion for it and respect. Even if you don't have passion, just respect what you're doing to really do it properly. And then if you do it that way, you'll most likely succeed. Nothing's guaranteed, but you'll be in a far better position to succeed.
Wonderful, great answer to that. So investing in your time, energy, resources, but also I hear discipline.
Yes, that's a name of the game. Yeah. When you work for yourself, discipline is the name of the game. Listen, I can wake up every day at 2 o'clock if I wanted to. Sometimes I wake up at 12, sometimes I do. But overall, it's all on you. So discipline is it. Yeah.
Lionel, what would you say are your future goals and aspirations for your business?
Future goal. Okay, so I'm looking to ultimately expand a little bit. I do a lot of weddings. So I do portrait photography, wedding photography. Those are my main two things. I do everything else also, like real estate. I do, parties, events, headshots.
Okay.
But a lot of my, bulk of my business comes from portraiture. There's a backdrop behind me. You can see a little backdrop rolls to the right of me. And then wedding events, videography, and photography. And so I would like to expand to a point where I can offer multiple vendors under one umbrella. So, bwcphotos.com is my website. Say you can come to me and you say, hey, I have a dinner anniversary or a wedding I want to do. Being that I have so many connections, because I do this, I know a lot of DJs, I know decorators, I know caterers, and it would be nice to have just like, you can come to me and say, listen, I got $50,000, and I'm like, okay, I can take care of all that for you. I get your venue for you, I have all your vendors for you, I have your catering for you, like everything. So that's a long-term goal I want to progress to eventually. In the short term, I am opening a studio at the Morristown Mall. And so I'm going to start doing shoots there and just having a larger creative space, and having the ability to just do more creative shooting. And then also I want to teach classes. That's one of my goals too. I want to, so at the Morristown Mall there's a spot called Charm City Mom, and in the back of it is where I'm going to be doing photography. It's a pretty big space.
Okay.
And so eventually I want to get to a point where I, do like maybe small groups of like 10 and teach photography to them. So like mainly beginners and maybe intermediates, but mostly beginners. And just, pass on knowledge and stuff like that. So I just want to expand a little more.
Absolutely.
That's in a nutshell.
And that would be a great opportunity to give back to the community, right? By offering courses or classes that will allow other up-and-coming videographers and photographers to learn from one of the best. Right.
And let me add, because this would also fall into the challenges I say for people. A challenge that I still have currently is that, so I'm independent. I do all this myself. And I have a certain idea of the quality I like in my head. And one issue I do have is trusting other people to help me without micromanaging, so to speak, right? Like, because I need your quality to match mine, So a popular thing in photography, if I'm doing a wedding, I might hire somebody to second shoot with me, a second shooter. And so, for me to do that, I gotta really like your work and make sure it lines up with mine,
Absolutely.
So that's another thing. You have to be willing to accept help. And show people maybe how you like things done, but then you just got to trust them that they're going to get it done the way you like. Yeah. Because it'll make things far easier for you. Right. So like me, I have a tendency to do things the hard way because I like things a certain way, but it's more detrimental than it is beneficial. So, that's another thing.
Well, that's a good point. Especially when it comes to Black entrepreneurs, one of the biggest challenges is being able to collaborate. And being able to find someone who shares a similar vision as you may have, right? So that's important. And one of the keys to success of businesses. So I'm glad to hear that that's what you recognize that as a challenge, but also open to learn how to work through that as well.
Right. So that would be part of my expansion, is like being able to hire people that can just help, maybe help edit or help do whatever, and I'm okay. I'm comfortable with it. That would just alleviate a lot of the work that I do, and I'd pay them, of course, but it's like. Yeah, that's a big one. Okay. Instead of putting all the pressure on myself because I just have like ridiculous standards. Like it's annoying. It's beneficial, but it's annoying. Right. It's
Right. Do you have any up and coming plans? Anything that's coming up in the future that you think that is important for the audience to know that you would like to share?
Mainly the studio at the Morristown Mall. It'll be inside of, there's a place called Charm City Mom Boutique. In the back of it, I have a photo studio. I plan on doing a lot of fall and winter shoots. So I plan on doing like whole fall setups and then Christmas setups and stuff like that. That's mainly it. I do have like a little content network on YouTube where I do podcasting and music artist interviews and performances. That's BWCD Network on YouTube. So I do plan on expanding that more and trying to produce more content and, eventually generate like revenue from that, which I'm not very far from. So I guess those two in the short to medium term are my main two goals, is to get my studio up and running and then focus more on content network. And then outside of that, just staying booked and busy. That's what I got for now.
Wonderful. So a lot of big things you have coming up, working on the studio, continue to evolve and develop in
Right.
your craft.
Always.
And also looking to, at some point in time, give back to the community. You gave some great information. Thank you so much, Lionel, for your time. You can actually find this interview on our website, which is www.pbskus.net. Again, that's www.pbskus.net. If you want to learn more about Lionel and the work that he's doing, you can also go to his website, which is what again?
It's www.bwcphotos.com. My Instagram is instagram.com/Brotha with the camera. So that's Brotha with a camera. Brotha with a camera. And yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. Check him out. You won't be disappointed. Check us out on his website. Give this brother a call. Reach out, look at his stuff on his website, and book him. You won't be disappointed. I personally had an opportunity to see this brother's work. He does great work, phenomenal work. And so I'm speaking from personal experience. So thank you so much, Lionel, for your time, and have a blessed day.
Thank you.